Bill. I want to end with a final reflection. Yesterday, the Babylon Bee, which I just has found to be the second funniest satire site next to this show, it has really trumped The Onion. It's much better now. They ran a thing that said a headline that said "Minority man thankful white guy is around to tell him what jokes he should find offensive." Stating that his help is invaluable, local man Henry Green confirmed Monday just how thankful he is that he has a white friend around to tell him exactly what jokes he's supposed to find offensive as a black man. And I laughed at that because I think a lot of this stuff is because of fear, intersectionality, people imposing, wanting to rush out before the black people protest in order to preserve their own reputation. And this thing that's happening in Virginia, this Ralph Northam thing, Ralph Northam, I think, should have been impeached for recommending that babies can be left to die if you don't want them. I thought that's a terrible thing. But this thing where he had a picture of a guy, a Klansman, and a guy in blackface on his med school yearbook just seems to me something, something stupid that he did in the past, something stupid and insensitive he did in the past. And at the same time, I do wonder, as I wonder when I talk about, women, when I say, gee, it seems to me that women are making a big mistake dedicating themselves to a work life that is going to take them away from raising their kids. That seems to me a mistake to me, but I don't know what women think. If a woman tells me that's what she wants, hey, it's none of my business. It really isn't. So I don't want to sit around and tell black people what's offensive or not. But in fact, the majority of black people in Virginia do not find Northam to be a racist guy, don't want him to resign over this. They think it's stupid. They think it's a bad thing that he did when he was in his 20s, but they don't want it. They don't feel that offended by it either. I know a little bit about this because when I was a kid, I learned about Western civilization through literature. That is what brought me into the West, which I loved so much. I loved this country. I loved it as a kid. I love it now. But what taught me the traditions was literature. I read my way into the traditions, and a lot of literature, because of what I said at the opening about Western civilization, a lot of it was anti-Semitic, and I was a Jew. There was a lot of stuff, Shylock and Shakespeare, Fagin in Dickens, the Jewish thief in Dickens, Robert Cohn, Hemingway. I was a huge Hemingway fan when I was a kid, and Robert Cohn was the evil, what did he call him? Jewish. He has his Jewish superiority, and he's kind of a wimp in The Sun Also Rises. So they were all there, and I realized that there was a substantial section of Western civilization that harbored anti-Semitic memes. We didn't call them memes back then, but they did. Why wasn't I offended? I wasn't offended because I did not think that was what I loved about America. I thought that was antithetical to what I loved about America and about the West. I thought it was a mistake because people are sinful. There are mistakes involved in everything. And I think that that's true too with blacks. Every day that we held slaves, every day that we had Jim Crow, we were violating the principles of America. Okay? People do that. They violate their principles, but the principles tend to creep up on them and force them into line over time. And I think that has happened to America. And so when somebody says something, you want to know if that thing that he says, which might be insensitive, it might be stupid, it might hurt your feelings, you want to know if that represents who he is. I determined that the anti-Semitism that was deeply embedded in Western culture still did not represent what Western culture was. And I think black people have to ask themselves now, do they really believe that this country is irredeemable, that this country is just more, they always talk about racism in America. Have they been anywhere else? Do they know what it's like anywhere else? I traveled around a lot. I lived overseas for 7 years. I find this the least racist country on earth, the least racist country on earth. And maybe being offended all the time is not really the way to go. I mean, maybe being afraid of assimilation, being afraid it's going to take something away from you is not the way to go. Maybe the melting pot was the right idea, and intersectionality and identity politics is a bad idea. I mean, the one thing I've noticed about progressives, they tend to progress into really bad territory, and I think they've done that here. It is something I think blacks and whites should be talking about to each other without calling each other names.